everybody, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Sherry, and today I am starting on the first step of a pretty fun adventure, I hope. I have recently become very interested in the Victorian period of cooking. It has started out by this book right here, Victorian Cakes by Carolyn B. King. And what it is a reminiscence of her childhood in the Victorian era in Chicago. And she reminisces about the cakes that were made in her kitchen, either by her mother, her sister, herself, her aunties. And it's just wonderful insight to the kitchens themselves, the stoves, the tools, the utensils. She talks about all of that in here. So if you have any interest in Victorian cakes, this is the book to grab. It is so interesting. It's such a fun read. I enjoyed it very much. But then it got me to wanting to make Victorian cakes, and I started watching what is that, English Heritage on the YouTube. And Miss Crombie, she's an actress that plays a cook that was in the period, and she takes you through small lessons, 4 or 5 minutes worth of Christmas pudding or black pudding or ginger cake or just different recipes that would have been in the Victorian era that would have been cooked in that kitchen. And she did some puddings, and I was like, I'm gonna do a pudding. I've never done a pudding before. But the thing that falls in every pudding recipe from the Middle Ages on to maybe the 18th century, maybe then we start seeing it fall off, is suet. S-U-E-T, suet. And so I was like, well, this seems like it's a very important ingredient because it's listed in so many recipes. What exactly is suet, and what can I get away with? Because if you look up suet, if you do a web search and look up suet, you're going to find bird feed, where they take the suet, because suet, when it cools down, it's very hard, like a bar of soap. So anyway, they mix it with bird feed, and they make a bird ball or a bird square, and they put it out for winter feed for the birds. So in America, that's where you find a lot of your suet. If you call a grocery store, they're not going to have it, most likely. You might, but in my area, none of my grocery stores did. So I was like, okay, I've got to find out more about suet. And so I did, and I put out on my social media, I was like, where do y'all get y'all suet in the area? And I got some very interesting answers, but none of them, they gave me answers, but not necessarily correct answers. So I thought I need to look more into this and maybe do a video on it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is suet. Now I've got some notes laying in front of me, so if I look down, it's because I don't want to miss anything in this video. I want you to know as much as I know about suet. So suet is this hard fat that is found in the loin of cattle and sheep. And so kind of on the haunch area is the area where the loin is, but it is the fat that's mainly around the kidney. It is hard to find to use for cooking. Definitely in America. From things I've read, even in England right now, the suet's just not on the grocery shelves like it used to be. You can order it online. However, be aware that what you order online is usually coated in a flour, so you either have to make adjustments to the flour content of your recipe, or if you're gluten sensitive, you might not want to use that. But anyway, you can find it. But what's the best thing to do is just render it yourself. So the fat from the kidney is what is suet. All the other fat in a cattle body is what we're going to call muscle fat. And there is a difference in muscle fat and kidney fat, okay? The main difference is the melting point of these two fats. Muscle fat has a low melting point, which means at very low heat, even sometimes just the warmth of your hand can start melting this fat. Suet has a high melting point, which makes it better for baking and puddings and casseroles and all the different things they used in period. When you look at muscle fat and suet, they really look similar. You really cannot tell the difference unless you're an expert, a butcher or something like that. But the normal everyday American who doesn't deal with this, looking at it, probably would not be able to tell the difference. You don't really see the difference until you start the process of rendering the suet, because the suet has a lot of connective tissue in it. and you have to get that connective tissue as best you can out of it. I do have some here, and we're going to look closer at it later, and I'll show you the connective tissue at a little bit later in the video. But I do have Suet right here, and we're going to mess with it in just a minute. Let me see. What else do I want to say before we get started? Well, okay. Can you use muscle fat in a Victorian recipe and have it turn out good? Yes, you can. You can use muscle fat and you can use shortening in a recipe. You're not going to achieve the texture of the pudding like they would have had if you're going to redact that recipe. If you're going to recreate that recipe like a Victorian cook would have, you're not going to achieve the same effect. Remember, it's at a lower melting point. That's going to affect the internal, what's going on inside that pudding, and we'll talk about that a little bit further down. It's going to make a heavier pudding, and there are for reasons, and it's going to give it a more strong, meaty taste or flavor. The muscle fat will. The shortening not necessarily won't give it that flavor, but just still going to have, it still has a much lower melting point. So suet. Let's talk about suet. Why is it so important? Why must we use it in these recipes? Well, like I said before, it has a very high melting point. So when suet is rendered and put away and it has hardened back up, what you do is you grate it or you pinch it in tiny little pieces, and then you add that grated pieces to your ingredients, to your batter. And then when you mix that batter up and you set it in, however you're going to cook it, traditionally we're going to boil it on this one, and that's as the batter is cooking inside, the melting point is high enough that that little bit of suet is not melting with the batter. So the batter is getting to set up around that suet. With fat, our shortening, it'll melt before the inside batter is starting to get firm, starting to bake. So by doing that, it just seeps out into your pudding, which is not a bad thing. It's just you're not going to achieve the period look or taste that you want, but it'll probably still be fine. So that suet holds its little shape in there until it reaches its melting point, and then it'll slowly melt and it'll distribute through the pudding slowly. But the pudding is already setting by the time it's doing this. So when it's melting, it's leaving little holes, little voids in the pudding, and the end result is a lighter pudding and a spongy texture when you use suet. So yes, you can use other fats, but you won't get that spongy texture that you will, and it'll be moisture with suet too, because it's a slow release of it through it. It has, I think I mentioned this, it has a milder flavor than the regular fat. You're not going to get that strong meaty flavor as you would, which makes it great for the dessert puddings. If you're doing a meat pudding, then that stronger flavor probably won't matter. But if you're doing a sweet pudding or a Christmas pudding or something like that, maybe you want to use suet so you won't get that strong beef flavor in your apple, cherry, whatever pudding you make. I think I covered all of that. Last thing before I actually start showing you some of the suet down here is the word tallow, because that's one of the things I got. Someone sent me a little link to where I could get tallow, and tallow in general terms just means rendered fat, and it can be rendered fat, muscle fat, it could be rendered suet, it could be a combination. So when you get ready to use tallow, be aware you're not going to be able to make candles out of tallow made from muscle fat, because it's not going to solidify, it's just going to stay loosey-goosey. So tallow, yes, it is a rendered fat, but you have to watch what rendered fat it is, and if you want suet, then you need to make sure that it is rendered suet and not any other kind of fat. So I'm going to turn you around and I'm going to face you down so you can see the suet that I have here. So bear with me a minute. All right. So this is 3 pounds and some little ounces of suet. And this is what I'm talking about, the connective tissues in the suet. And I want you also to look at the color of this suet. This is the color of suet that you want. Thank you, Rod Brokers Meat Market in Westphalia, Texas, because they had it, and this is beautiful, and I am going to get more from them. So what you want to do is you want to just keep stripping that connective tissue off of it, because you don't want that in your suet. I'm going to use a modern technique of a crock pot, because I don't want to watch it. And what happens is you put it in there, you're going to put it on low or warm, because you don't want to cook this in any way. You don't want to fry whatever connective tissue that get left in here, and there's going to be a good percentage of connective tissue left in here. You cannot get all the connective tissue out. You do the best you can. You get out blood vessels, you get out muscle, you get whatever you need out of there, but you're still going to have some. And when that cooks off, it totally melts, you're going to have leftovers, which is called graves, and that's just the connective tissue fried, cooked, and you just get rid of that. In period, I read that they would have used it for fish bait, but I didn't really get into the graves of it. So anyway, this is what I've got to break apart and start melting. This is going to take me a while, so there's no use of you just hanging around and watching me pluck this, because I'm going to have to cut off this stuff, and I'm going to have to pull out all that connective tissue. I'll show you some more before I turn you off. See, look at that. That is what you're pulling off this. This is how you're cleaning it. And like I said, look at that. That pulled off really clean and smooth. Oh, you think that's great until you crack it open, and there's more. So you will never get all the connective tissue out. You just do the best you can, and then you put it in here. So I'm going to pause you for now, and I will come back when I have all this filled and I get it turned on, and then I will take you through the process of how it melts as it goes. So I'll be back with you. Oh, look, I got connective tissue hanging off my finger. All right, I'll be back with you guys. Hi, and welcome back to part 2. And while you've been gone, I've been plucking this suet apart and trying to get all the connective tissue out of it, and this is where I've gotten with it. This is a nice little bunch, but I know from reading about it that there's still a high percent of connective tissue in there, so I'm going to lose quite a bit of that. But this is my idea. I have plucked and plucked off this, and I really cannot get any more off of it. So what I'm going to do is I've got me a second crock pot. I'm going to go on because I don't want to waste this, and I know that I will not get very much out of all this kind of skin and connective tissue, but I want to get what I can out of it. So I'm going to put both of these on a low warm heat and try to render as much as I can out of it. So when I get all that done, then of course I'll bring you back. I did forget to mention one thing earlier, and is why I'm doing a Victorian pudding, is because I wanted to do it with the pudding bags or the pudding cloths. I didn't want to use animal intestine. I didn't want to mess with that. So I decided I'd go on and do Victorian. The first mention, I believe, of cloth bags or pudding bags, or I forget what they're called actually in the cookbook, is around 1617. So it doesn't say that didn't happen within the medieval or the Renaissance time period, because the cookbooks did run a little behind what cooks were actually doing. So anyway, that's the reason I'm doing Victorian, is so I can use a cloth bag. This is going to take quite a while to render because it's going to be on low, because remember, no cooking this connective tissue. We just want it to separate off the fat, and if it was regular muscle fat, it would take no time, but this is suet, it's going to take a little bit longer. So as soon as I get all of this rendered, I will bring you back. I might be in a different chart. It might be tomorrow, it might be later tonight. So I'll see you in a little bit. Good morning. It is day 2 of my Suet project. Yesterday, I chopped it all up into small pieces, got out the connective tissue, and put it into the crock pots to start the slow melting process. And it's very important to do the slow melt. You're not cooking this, you're just melting the fat. What I didn't tell you though is I did not put leads on my crock pots, and that's because I wanted to make sure that the moisture escaped as it melted down. I did take pictures during the process, so you could see what it looked like when it started, and then within the process of how it began to melt and do its thing. So today we're actually going to take our melted product and strain it to get all the nasty bits out of all that connective tissue that I told you was going to be in there. So our first one, if you remember, well, of course you remember, it was just seconds ago for you. This is the one that I chopped real fine, and I tried to pull out the connective tissue on it. And if I can, I'm going to try to get close enough to show you. There you go. See all the floaty nasty bits in there? That is what we're going to strain out. So right here, I have a large measuring cup because I'm really curious to see how much this renders out also. So you can also see that with me. And I've got a strainer in there with the coffee filter. And we're going to just slowly pour it in here and let it do its thing. I hope you can see it very well. During the night or yesterday, I would stir it with a chopstick because I didn't want to keep sticking a whole spoon in there. I don't know why. I just did a chopstick. All right, it's going good. Now, they warned me when I started this, or not they warned me, but I read about it, that you have a large percentage of the connective tissue that just won't go away. It's going to keep on. You're not going to melt it away. Wow, it's doing quite well, actually. Look at that. Last little bit in there. There we go. I'll put that back over there. What I might do is after this is dripped out, I might put this back in for just a little bit longer, just to see if anything else comes out of it. Because like I said, this is the first time I've done it. This is a learning experience for me. And it still looks kind of like Jello. So I don't know if that means that there's more to come out of it. So the best thing I can do is, of course, is just try it and see. And I'm still dripping out fat there. Wow. I am almost up to 2 cups of fat. And this, of course, will drain some more. But right now, I'm going to put it back in here. Got my coffee filter. Put it back in there. Put that to the side. Plug it back up. It's going to go back on low, or warm. Actually, this one has a warm. So I'm going to put it on warm. This one, this little booger doesn't have, this is an old one, as you can tell, the orange on it. It only has a low and a high. So I didn't have the opportunity to put this one on a warm. This, you remember there was a bunch in there that I couldn't get out because it was so wrapped up in that connective tissue. But I was curious to see how much fat I could render out of just that blob of nastiness. It had a little bit of meat on it that's turned brown today. I'm going to put this into there. And we're going to drain this one and see if we can get to the 2 cups. This one has a lot more nasty little bits to it. That one had bigger ones, and this has, it's not dirt, but almost like dirt particles in it. So, all right, so now here we are. Hopefully this will keep draining. One more. Almost to 2 cups. So close to 2 cups. Some nasty stuff right there in it. Well, I've been reading about tallow and lard and the vitamins and such that are in these, and um, how we've all went as Americans. Well, actually, it was just we were fed this and we all believed it because we didn't have any other knowledge. But it's like lard is bad for you, tallow is bad for you, and they wanted you to go to what? All that nasty stuff like margarine, which is just fake stuff. It's not. It's plastic. It's not even food for our health. And but it comes to find out this stuff has really serious vitamins and minerals in it. I told my husband he takes a B12, and I do too. And was one of the things that when I was watching videos about it that said that it had. All right, I don't know why this is not draining any faster, but I'm going to set it over here for right now. We're right at 2 cups, and I believe when that little bit drains out, we will be at 2 cups. But I didn't want to sit here and just keep you sitting here while I'm draining that. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put them in these little bread tins like this because that's what I have. And I don't know how much will fit in here. I'll move back so maybe you can see me do it. I'm just going to take it and pour it. I'm going to make 2 big ones, I think. There's some keys in the bottom of that. I'm not going to put that in there. Okay, so I have 2 tins. I'm going to let this set. It'll just come to room temperature. It'll cool off, and hopefully it'll be the white suet that I can grate and put in our English pudding. So as soon as that cools, I will bring you back for just a few seconds so you can see it. I've still got to decide which English pudding I'm going to do. So stay tuned for that one too. So I'll see you back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the last part of rendering suet. We have it right here. It has solidified. It's beautiful. It's white. It's in there good and tight. As a matter of fact, to get this out, here's the bar that I got out. But to get this out, I heated up some water, put it in the bottom of one tin, and then set the tin in it. Getting it warm enough to finally, it just slid right out. So I'm going to put these actually in the refrigerator because, like I said previously, I don't know what pudding recipe I'm doing yet. I know I want to do a boiled pudding, not a baked pudding, because that just intrigues me. So I'm going to get these in the refrigerator. Thanks for coming along with me on this adventure, and I will surely bring you along when I decide what pudding I'm going to do and how we're going to do it, and we'll see if it works out. So it's been fun. I hope you'd enjoy this, and we will see you in my kitchen soon. Bye.